How's it going, everyone? Today we are going over all of the balance changes for Season 7 of Disney Speedstorm. That's right, they finally dropped the patch notes and the community pit stop, and in today's video I'm going to be diving in and taking a look at all of the changes because there is a ton of them, and this is my initial reaction to the changes. I'm going to be reading through them for the first time at this recording. So Disney Speedstorm put out their new community pit stop, racer balancing, and stat caps. They said, "Hey Speedstars, join us as we break down the significant list of racer balancing changes coming to the game at the start of Season 7. To kick things off, we'll be discussing standard balancing changes that will go live in Season 7, and then move on to a more specific issue with racer stat caps that required several additional stat-based adjustments for grade level 50 racers only." So to start things off, racers and skill balancing. The common skill Fire. A racer can only be stunned once by each instance of the backward activation. The stun duration from the backwards activation has been reduced. This is a much needed change in my opinion. The fire skill was so annoying. The backwards activation, when it was at like power 5, it was just incredibly obnoxious to fight against. It was way too good of a gatekeeping power up in order to stop people from passing you, and now hopefully it should be a lot less effective. It's not going to stun you as long, and you can only be stunned once by the fire, so you could honestly just like dive into it, take your one stun, and then follow the fire trail, which I think is really, really nice. Moving on to combat stat, brawler, racer, class, and stuns. The combat stat in-game directly affects the duration of stuns, whether that be when you stun a rival racer or when your own racer is stunned. Our team is implementing changes so racers getting stunned feels less punishing for players. These adjustments are as follows. The duration of a stun for racers with a low combat stat will be shorter. The speed reduction effect from being stunned has been lowered. The duration of stuns from a brawler class racer dash has been reduced, and the knockback effect from a brawler class racer dash has been increased. This is a great change in my opinion. Getting stunned in Disney Speedstorm has felt way too punishing for way too long, and now with the new racer balancing changes to combat stats, the brawler class was obnoxious, being able to side bash and they get punished for so long, and now you won't get stunned as long, but you're going to get knocked back further, and in my opinion getting knocked back feels way less punishing and is way more fun to play against than something that stuns you for an insane amount of time, and making racers with low combat stats a little bit better is in my opinion a good change. Now moving on to specific racer balancing, Kicking things off with the Aladdin Collection, we have Racer Jasmine. The normal activation of Jasmine's unique skill only grants invulnerability when she is in proximity to Raja. The duration of the charged activation of Jasmine's unique skill has been reduced by 1 second across all star levels. Raja's speed has been reduced at star levels 4 and 5 for the charged activation of Jasmine's unique skill. Raja's speed has been increased at star levels 3 and 4 for the charge activation of Jasmine's unique skill. So Raja's speed, that last change does not make sense to me. Raja's speed has been reduced at star levels 4 and 5 for the charge activation, but it's been increased at 3 and 4. So what is actually happening at star levels 4? I'm not too sure, but Raja's going slower at the higher levels and faster at the lower levels, I guess. I don't know, that change is a little confusing to me, but the other changes are great. Only granting immunity in proximity to Raja is very good, and Raja lasting not as long for the charge activation is great. Jasmine was getting way too strong. Racer Aladdin, the speed at which Aladdin travels while the normal activation of his unique skill, the auto steering carpet, the one that throws out coins, that one's being reduced by 10%. Genie's top speed stat has been reduced, and Jafar's top speed stat has been increased. Overall, pretty happy with the changes to the Aladdin Collection. Genie was a little bit too strong, Jafar was a little bit too weak, so those top speed decreases and increases make a lot of sense. Jasmine, I like her nerfs, maybe she could have used more. Same thing with Aladdin, I don't know if 10% to his carpet is going to do quite enough for him, but hopefully it'll make him less violent. Moving on to the Little Mermaid Collection. Racer Ariel, the speed boost granted from Ariel's charged unique skill after collecting 4 relics has been reduced between 17 to 13% depending on the star level. For Prince Eric, the length of the trail effects from Prince Eric's charged unique skill has been reduced by 25%, and his top speed stat has been increased. Triton's top speed stat has been increased, and his handling stat has been increased, and Ursula's handling stat has been increased. I am totally fine with all of these changes, in my opinion. Racer Ariel needed a bigger nerf than that, in my opinion. opinion, but it is a step in the right direction. And you know, she was added to the game last season. She can thrive in the meta for a little bit. I think she's still easily going to be S tier and one of the best characters in the game, because I don't think the issue is her charge skill. I think it's the fact that her relics give her such a massive top speed increase, because people will literally just collect her relics and sit on them and just keep them. Prince Eric reducing his ship is really nice, and buffing his top speed is good. That's what I was calling for with Eric. I said his ship needs a nerf, but he needs a buff to make up for it, because the ship is the only good thing about him, and they've done just that, so that's great. Triton just getting stat buffs I think is okay. He might be a little more viable now with a beefier stat pool, and same thing with Ursula. I think Ursula was already pretty good, and this handling buff might be enough to propel her into the S tier. We're gonna have to see. Moving on to Hans, the duration of the charged activation of Hans' unique skill has been reduced by 20%, and Hans' handling stat has been increased. Hans needed a way bigger nerf than this. The charged activation is good, you know, because it was very obnoxious to play against, but Hans is still going to be one of the best characters in the game. I have no doubt about it. Moving on to the Toy Story and Monsters Inc. collections, we have Racer Sully. Sully's top speed stat has been reduced. His handling stat has been increased. Randall's top speed stat has been increased. The speed boost granted from Buzz Lightyear's charge unique skill has been increased by 10%, and Buzz Lightyear's stat has been increased. I'm just going to take all three of these at the same time. Sully needed that top speed nerf. The handling buff is okay. We're going to have to see how much the top speed nerf actually is in order to determine whether he's going to be super meta still or not. Randall, top speed buff, you know, that's good. Buzz Lightyear handling buff, yeah, sure. And then a 10% speed boost for his charge skill is good, but I think he needed a little bit more than that. Okay, moving on to the Mickey and Friends collection. Racer Minnie Mouse, her top speed stat has been increased. For Steamboat Mickey, the duration of his charged activation of Steamboat Mickey's unique skill has been reduced by 1 second, and the length of the trail effect has been reduced by 25%. These are great changes in my opinion. Minnie Mouse desperately needed a buff. I don't know why they ever reduced her top speed, but hopefully it's back to where it was and higher than before. For Steamboat Mickey, that nerf is much like, yes, thank you. His trail skill was just as annoying as the fire skill, and I'm very glad that it's being reduced now. Moving on to Mulan and Mogi, some of the worst characters in the game. Mulan's top speed stat has been increased. Mogi now generates more manual boost when he is proximity to the wolves while the normal activation of his unique skill is active, and Mogi instantly fills his manual boost bar after the charged activation of his unique skill. I'm a big fan of these balance changes. Mulan desperately needed that top speed buff, and Mogi desperately needed something, and so I'm happy he got this. It's going to be like Sully now, where he should be able to hopefully keep his boost up the entire game. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make these two characters viable, because they were pretty deep into like the F and D tiers, but hopefully they'll be a little bit higher after the changes. Moving on to our Lilo and Stitch characters, we have the duration of the normal activation of Lilo's unique skill has been increased across all star levels, and Captain Gantu's handling has been increased. I like both of these changes. Lilo needed a lot more though. That's not a big enough buff. Like the issue with Lilo is her skills suck. Not that they don't last long enough, they just suck. They're just bad. Her camera being buffed is like, yeah, it's fine, but she needed so much more than that. And Captain Gantu's handling being increased, you know, that's cool, I guess. It's not like a bad change. Captain Gantu is fine, and he might be a little bit better now, which is cool. Moving on to Oswald and Wally, our final two characters. The speed at which Oswald travels while the charged activation of his unique skill is active has been reduced by 10%, and for Racer Wally, the amount of manual boost granted by collecting the piles of scrap metal from the normal activation of Wally's unique skill has been reduced by 15%. I'm not super okay with these changes. Like, Oswald and Wally were not oppressive, so I don't know why they're both getting nerfs, but I guess those parts of their kit were very strong, but it was like the thing that was making them strong. Like, if they are going to make these changes, I think they need a top speed buff in compensation for that, because I get trying to make a character more balanced, but when you take away something that makes them strong, you gotta buff other aspects of them, like they did with Eric. So I don't know how I feel about these changes, but honestly, these general racer buffs as a whole, I am totally okay with. And moving on to different stat cap related stuff, For racer stat caps, as some players started to max out their racers by reaching 5 stars and racer upgrade level 50, an issue was identified where stat bonuses granted by crew members were being capped. After a lengthy investigation by the team, a solution was identified, but it requires rebalancing some stats for racers at upgrade level 50 only. The changes to the affected racers are listed in full below. So we're gonna handle a bunch of these at a time. We're just gonna list them all off. We're gonna list all of the changes off, and then we'll talk about them. So starting off, Racer Jafar top speed stat has been increased. Racer Ariel handling stat's been increased. Racer Prince Eric top speed has been increased. King Triton top speed and handling's been increased. Ursula's handling was increased. Hans's handling was increased. Olaf's boost was decreased. Sully's top speed was decreased. His handling was increased. Randall's boost was increased. Buzz Lightyear's handling was increased. Woody's boost was decreased. Minnie's top speed was increased. Goofy's acceleration was increased. Captain Gontu's top speed was increased. His handling was increased. Oswald's top speed was decreased. Hortensia's top speed was decreased. Beast's boost stat was increased, and Mulan's top speed stat was increased. So this is really interesting. They're like balance changes, but only at level 50. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work. Does it like rebalance their stat pool once you upgrade them to level 50? It's a very interesting change in my opinion. But I'm not totally opposed to it. Most of these are they're fine. A lot of them are the same balance changes they got before, but they also apply to level 50 now, which is interesting. Nothing really stands out to me here. They're all fine changes. Hortensia and Oswald being nerfed, I think, is really funny. Besides that, though, they're all just like okay. So yeah, the changes here are interesting, but it is a lot. And moving on to the final section, we have the crew changes. The previously mentioned stat cap changes gave us an opportunity to review how crew stat bonuses are applied. Previously, crew members granted a purely numerical stat bonus, for example, plus 500 to top speed. Going forward, crew members will now grant percentage-based stat bonuses, with the max percentage for each individual stat being plus 5%. Taking the top speed stat as an example, the 5% bonus is tied to the maximum possible top speed stat for a racer. These changes also allow us to increase the number of different racer stats a crew member can grant bonuses to. This means that common crew members will now grant 2 different stats, while rare crew members will now grant bonuses to 3 different stats. We are also making a change to normalize the behavior of epic crew members. Previously, epic crew members granted a higher stat bonus to epic racers than to common or rare racers. From now on, epic crew will grant the same stat bonuses regardless of the rarity of the racers they are equipped to. We are also making some adjustments to the skill bonuses granted by the following crew members. King Louie will now grant a skill bonus to boost instead of shield. Otto will now grant a skill bonus to rush instead of shot. Mrs. Hasawaga, I think that's how you pronounce it, will now grant a skill bonus to shot instead of hack. And the elephant on a bicycle will now grant a skill bonus to hack instead of bomb. And those are all the balance changes. So the crew changes are interesting. I don't know how I feel about them. Looking at them in game, I think it makes crew members like I honestly kind of like it. Like, it's better and it's worse at the same time. For balancing of the game, I think it's strictly worse. I will say that. It makes the game less balanced, and it shines light on a very heavy problem that Disney Speedstorm has right now, which is the fact that top speed is so important, and this is making heavy top speed characters higher and lower top speed characters lower, if that makes sense. For example, if you add, like, I'm in my game right now, if I look at my Frozen collection, I go to Hans, who has like the highest top speed in the game, and I take a look at Bolda, who boosts top speed, I'm getting plus 389 top speed off of Bolda. And then if I switch over to Olaf, a character with a relatively low top speed, I'm only getting 265 top speed off of Bolda. And now this is applying to 3 different crew members. So whereas Olaf is getting, you know, plus just round it down to 200 or round it up to 300 even, he's getting like plus 900, whereas Hans is now getting plus 1000 or plus 1200, I think, off of his crew members. Yeah, which is a crazy difference. It's a 300 point top speed difference, whereas before it would have been the same, and where crew members could have been used to buff up low top speed racers, now it's just all being reworked, and it feels bad because people with low top speed, now when they apply top speed crew members, they're not getting as big as a buff. So pretty much the rich in top speed are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer because they're not getting as much buffs, if that makes sense. And in my opinion, I don't like that aspect of the change in the slightest. It doesn't really let you cover for your character's weaknesses anymore, which is previously what crew members used to be able to do. However, I do like the aspect that they buff 3 different stats now, and I like that it's percentage based in theory, not in practice, because in practice the issue that I stated before is way worse. But I do like the idea that, you know, you can sort of mess around with the builds of your characters more. You can buff up 9 different stats, you can affect, you know, 3 different power-ups. It's way more dynamic than it was before, which I think is fun, and it adds more to, again, the building of characters. But in practice, it's just going to be all top speed, and the poor in top speed get poorer and the rich get richer is what's happening really here. And then the epic crew member change I think is really good. It does hurt considering I you know, previously had like plus 15% stat increases on like Duck Family and Bruni, and now it's down to 10% or whatever. But it does make it more fair because epic racers always had an advantage before, simply because their epic crew members would provide more of a benefit. However, now that is not true, which I think is obviously good for the game. And overall, this was a hefty balance adjustment, but I am pretty satisfied with all the changes. Let me know what you guys think of them below. I'm really curious to hear all of your guys' thoughts, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.